Okay, sharing. Conversation, the end of the day. Now, people sometimes end up going to therapists. We talk about this, and I think sometimes therapists can be a problem. And how can they be a problem? Well, they can be a problem because they tend to have a foregone conclusion about what's supposed to happen or how human beings should be. And I might have mentioned this earlier reading about a woman who looked at the relationship between the way men loved and women loved, and she went, or he or she, whoever it was that wrote this article, tried to figure out human sexuality by looking at animal sexuality. And this is one of the bad things that exists in modern culture, which is this tendency to see the human being as just another animal when all the evidence is otherwise. I mean, you really have to just throw out all the other evidence to not see that there's a huge gap between what an animal is and what a human being is. I mean, in my writing someplace, I talk about this sort of thing. We have in our language the word humane. And I don't care what you observe in the animal kingdom, you're never going to find a behavior by an animal that you would call humane. Okay? Only human beings can be humane. All right? Animals can't be humane. So one of the things that you can run into today is particularly is in the psychological field, and also just spills over, You read a woman's magazine or a man's magazine, or a guy talks on the corner with his friends about, he goes to the bar after work and they sit around and they talk about their screwed up relationships, and those places are the worst places to get information. Boys telling each other about what sex is about when they're teenagers is a cesspool of bad information. And women getting together and picking on their boyfriends is also a cesspool of bad information. It just has a different texture to it. If you want to have wisdom about other human beings, you have to create a structure in which that's what you're there for. And it probably would be better if what therapists did for couples was to create couples conversation groups where everybody came in as ignorant. The only thing that the counselor does is to help people do the conversation. And there's a book out there by a guy named Isaacs on dialogue. That's a good book. I haven't read it. A friend of mine read it. I looked at it. We can have intelligent dialogues in groups and produce wisdom. But there's rules. And I don't mean rules in the sense of laws like statutory laws of behavior. There's just ways the dynamic has to arise so that things occur in the right fashion. Let me give an example. In Isaacs, he talks about you get people together, and the first difficulty he has in working with a group is getting them to share real things that they think and feel. But this is the crucial element. This is like the one step you can't get to the rest of it without. You've got to have some reality. You've got to have some honesty. And this is one of the reasons why 12-step groups start out with, "Hi, my name is Joel and I'm an alcoholic." Except I'm an addict. And people go, "Hi, Joel." And then you get up there and you share. And the whole meeting is about people getting up and sharing. And what do they share? They get up and they confess. And they're contrite. And they should confess. And they should feel contrition. It's the core element. If you read my little booklet on the shadow, you'll find the discussion of the spiritual structure of 12 steps. Well, you can have this, and it's talked about in my book 7 Dates, you can have this in a marriage relationship where at the end of the day you confess to each other, and you can be contrite, and you can be forgiving in that relationship, And it isn't just that shit happens, it's gonna happen. You know, if you're in recovery, you're not recovered. You're in recovery. You keep making mistakes. We keep having that part of us, that shadow side, which trips us up. You know, and a lot of this is going to be related to our feelings of antipathy and sympathy. We haven't got away from that. We're just looking at it from a different direction. You know, we have likes and dislikes, and we react. I mean, I don't like L. Ron Hubbard, and I think Dianetics is a pretty bad piece of psychology on a number of levels. But he did put a word in there, and I don't know if he's the first person to use that, but he talked about reactive feelings. And we know those, you know. Something happens and we react. And that's that antipathy and sympathy. You know, it's a reactive feeling. It's not a conscious feeling. And if we can become conscious of these reactive feelings, that will help us in all our relationships. And if we're in a couple relationship, one of the things that we can be learning about with each other is to love. And we have this other person to study the nature of love together with. That is, it's part of what we do, you know. We get better at it. We don't just get in the relationship and go back to sleep now that we've got somebody to screw or to wash our dishes for us or to fix our cars. We get in the relationship because we really need to have somebody to have very intimate conversations with. And an intimate conversation is one is where you fess up to, you know, the bad shit, you know. And you can see it on the dramas. The dramas on TV write about this kind of stuff all the time, you know. And the daytime dramas, you know, one can watch them and study them in the sense of seeing sort of a kind of moral tale, you know. They repeat the same things over and over again. They sort of do the same thing, you know. They don't get very sophisticated. And one of the main teachings they teach over and over again is what a stupid thing it is to tell a lie. That's why at the end of the day, you confess. And that's why in a mature relationship, you have confession. And that's what's talked about in 7 Dates. Mutual confession. When we have an intimate relationship with another person, it doesn't get intimate all at once, especially on the level of soul and spirit. I mean, people get together because they want to have sex, and can't blame them. It's a lot of fun, you know, and it's also satisfying, and we need to be touched, you know. I said earlier, a lot of sex happens because people really want to be held, and it's the only way they know how to get held, you know. How many guys say to some girl that they know sort of slightly, you know, I really had a crappy day. Could I come over to your house tonight and have you hold me for about an hour and we just talk? I suspect that woman would melt, you know. And a guy would grow if he could understand that that's what he wants. He doesn't need to get laid. He needs to get held. And he needs to share. He needs to speak about the things he doesn't speak about. But again, if the woman's doing the mother thing, which he grew up hating, well, why did you do that? Which isn't about why you did it. You know, at that point you're already judged. So who wants to tell your mom why you did it? They're not interested in why you did it. They're not interested in understanding you. You hardly understand yourself. And that's one of the things that can happen when we do mutual confession. We understand ourselves. Or later.